This episode of Boss Rush Video Game Book Club is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn more about Boss Rush Media's family of podcasts, head on over to bossrushmedia.com or patreon.com/bossrushmedia. Thanks for your continued support. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Boss Rush Video Game Book Club, Boss Rush Media's book club style Spoilercast and review discussion show. I'm one of your hosts, Corey Dirrig, and alongside me, as always, on these fantastic discussions is none other than PK Power, Pat Klein.
What's up, everybody?
Hey, Pat.
How you doing?
You ready to swing into this discussion?
Well, I tried to find a spider to bite me, but they all kind of just ran the other direction, so I'm going to have to make do with what I can.
That's fair. That's fair. Sounds like you ran into a sticky situation.
Had to wash my hands a bit.
Oh, man. Pat, we have a very special guest tonight.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have him back on a Boss Rush program. I don't know if there's anybody really much better to have on this discussion from the single player experience podcast, our friend Sebastion Mauldin. Hello, Sebastion. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going. I've been really excited to talk about Spider-Man 2, specifically because I took 2 pages of notes for this game, and it was the first book club I've actually taken notes on. But also, it's been an interesting experience playing Spider-Man 2 right after playing the first game and all the DLC for that, and then Miles Morales, all back to back. And I know that you are a big comic guy, you're a big Spider-Man guy, and yeah, I'm really glad you're here. So welcome. I think this is going to be a great discussion. So what we're going to do, everybody, as always, we're going to do a 10 to 15 minute segment of spoiler free, and then we'll announce when we're heading into spoilers, and we're going to talk about the characters and the story and all that. But we are in a unique position to talk about not only prequels to this game as well and how it compares, but also what we would like from the third game and potentially the Wolverine game. So stick around for that. If you haven't played this yet, just bookmark this and come back and listen. If you just want to listen and not play the game, well, okay, cool. I do that sometimes for Spoilercast. So yeah, let's talk about some Spider-Man 2, the sequel to obviously the PlayStation 4 game. This is the sequel to that, and Miles Morales, the standalone kind of, I guess, expansion, or I would call it a full-blown game.
Would we say this is a sequel to the PlayStation 4 version or the PlayStation 5 version?
You're the PlayStation 5 version.
I am the PlayStation 5 version. But no, just because they use the PlayStation 5 model.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
I still like the first one better.
The whole Peter model switch or whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk about that. I think they just and obviously it seems like Insomniac has the same idea, as to just eliminate Peter from from this eventually. It's public knowledge out there, folks. They've said Miles Morales is their main Spider-Man moving forward. Just it's out there, okay. But yeah, I wanna talk about how we all kind of feel about this game. I'm gonna go first, just because my answer is kind of a little bit shorter than I suspect your guys' might. I really thoroughly enjoyed Spider-Man 2 as someone who never really played the original or Miles Morales until we decided to do Spider-Man 2 for book club, and I wanted to be caught up. I really liked it. I think, in my opinion, the gameplay is almost practically flawless. I think the story leaves some stuff to be desired, but I think overall the game, it's just really fun to play. These games have been nothing but a joy to play at the very least. Even the side missions have a lot of character to them, especially in this one, the friendly neighborhood
Oh
missions.
man, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done them all. I've actually been playing through them over the course of the last couple weeks, just to get those in, and because everybody said these are maybe the best. Some of the missions are better than the main mission, so I'm like, okay, well, I should probably play some of these. And I did one the other day that Pat and I were talking about earlier, and it had a lot of heart to it, and that's something I've always enjoyed about Insomniac, is that they put a lot of heart into their stuff. Not that other studios don't, but you can definitely feel that they love Spider-Man and they love this world and they love, contributing to this uh, Marvel universe. So um, I do want to say that I think the story was not paced well. Uh, I actually think the best paced story was Miles Morales, and I actually think that's because that game was maybe half the size of this. I flew through the main campaign in this game. I think I beat it in like 9 or 10 hours. I really liked it. I think Miles is a joy to play as. I love the, not that I don't like Peter Parker, but we've been reading and learning and watching Peter Parker's origin story for 90 years now as a as a human unit. So and as someone who was not very familiar with Miles Morales, playing Miles Morales in this back to back, I really love that character. I love, just, I don't know, he has a lot of, it feels like every time, everything he does and everything he stands for, there's a lot of heart and emotion behind it, and he just wants to do the right thing. um and obviously, like, his backstory, at least from the first game, it might be different overall, but at least from the first game, the first Spider-Man game, and then obviously into Miles Morales, like, it's similar but different to Peter, but it I don't know, for some reason I feel more for him because he's a kid, you know, and not that, Peter Parker wasn't a kid, but like when you go back, at least my real main exposure to Spider-Man was, Tobey Maguire, like a, 30-year-old man playing a teenager. I was like, it's not really a kid, Uh, so overall, I think Spider-Man 2 is a blast. I love the combat. I love Miles' powers. I love all the suits, man. Although I did play with the Spider-Verse suit for a little bit, and man, it gave me a headache so fast. I was like, oh my gosh, the world's moving so fast and I'm stuttering. It hurts. So, Sebastion, I'm going to go your way next. How do you, overall, Spider-Man 2?
Well, with great power comes great responsibility. That is the
I've heard that
famous
line.
Spider-Man quote, and I'm here to report that Insomniac handled that responsibility well. They, like, I think there's in the games industry in general, there's always that stigma about sequels, to where like critics kind of hit sequels a little harder than they do like original IPs or original like milestones and franchises, because like there's such that, I guess you could say, there's such that impression that they have to go bigger, go harder, go faster, but also innovate and also be different and also be worthy of the sequel, but also like bring something fresh to the table. And like, I think this sequel kind of nails all those, but it does fall short a little bit in here and there when you do look at like the pacing issues. But all that aside, is like, I look at this game as a Spider-Man fan, and I think unequivocally, this might be the most fun I've had with a video game all year. Not to say that this is the best video game I've played all year, but I think this is the most fun experience I've had all year. But as a Spider-Man fan, I will say, like, I loved this game. I think this, like you kind of alluded with the story, there are some issues there, and I did probably prefer the story of Miles Morales in Spider-Man's Miles Morales and Spider-Man 2018, because those are different, fresh interpretations of what we know of characters. But like in this one, it's taking all those and sort of mixing it in with almost like, is, like, we'll talk about the story and where it goes later, but like it almost mixes in what we've learned about those characters with other lores that we've gotten from other video games. And I don't know if I would have preferred that, but that's the choice they made here. But I will say, like, everything from gameplay to like the way you move to the, oh my goodness, the loading mechanic of like switching characters is god tier. It is absolutely S tier. I don't know if there's to me, this is why you get a PS5. The Spider-Man 2 has shown me this is where we're going in this console generation, and this is why you get a PS5. And I don't think any
Mm-hmm.
game has done that so far.
Yeah, I agree with you in the sense that like at least PS5, like real PS5 exclusives, I would
Mhm.
argue that Spider-Man might be the first game I would say you should probably get a PS5 to play. I mean, like, yeah, God of War or Horizon, but those are PS4 games, right? I mean, obviously they're beefed up and pretty on the PS5, but those are essentially PS4 games, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and then, Ratchet and Clank is a great game. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's a system seller. I don't.
No.
I feel like Ratchet and Clank is a library filler as opposed to a system seller. And then, Returnal is obviously probably a pretty niche title in terms of like an arcadey roguelike kind of experience. So I'm with you. I think Spider-Man 2 is like, yeah, this is my reason for owning a PlayStation 5 right now. And yeah.
It's the blockbuster. It's the
Yeah.
franchise. Like this is just another example of why I think this generation Insomniac is the best video game developer on the face of the planet at this point. Like, because no one else has made a case of being a better studio this generation than they have.
Yeah.
Those are big words right there.
Oh man, they are. But think about it like this: what, 3 games this generation so far, and none of those games are bad.
Mhm.
Like, none of those games are bad. Like,
Yeah.
in any year, they've had a game of the year contender that they put out, and every year since the new like next gen has come out, like, they've done it. They've put out a game every single year since 2020.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would like a little bit of spoilery type thing into my game of the year, which I know for free feeds this is going out in January, but for patrons, like this is coming out before our game of the year discussions. Like I think Spider-Man 2 is probably definitely cracking my top 5 games of the year easily. Um, I've been swapping games around a lot. I've been playing games that I've missed over the last week or so, and I think especially in terms of like a quote unquote licensed game, like this is Jedi Survivor and this are fighting for a spot in that top 5 right now. And I don't know, the more I play Spider-Man, the more I'm like, man, this game just, it feels so good. You know how sometimes you play games and like you're sticking with it because you're invested in the characters and the story, but there's like, I would say Uncharted as an example, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
the story and the characters you're invested in and the set pieces, but like the gameplay is like not amazing.
It's not the 10 out of 10 gameplay
Yeah.
you're there for. Yeah.
Yeah. But, and this is coming from someone who loves Uncharted, but like Spider-Man has near flawless controls, I would say. Man,
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah, like you mentioned game of the year though. I don't think there's anyone in who's doing this, who's doing the podcasting, who's reviewing games, who's in the games media in any sort of form or fashion that doesn't have Spider-Man at least in their top 10 this year.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you 100%. Pat, what about you? What are you thinking about Spider-Man 2? I know you've probably played like 65 games since since this game.
I have played about 65 games since then, but Spider-Man 2 it does hold a place in my memories because it is a good game. Like in terms of the superhero genre, it's probably the best of the
Whoa.
superhero games out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked Arkham,
Mm-hmm.
Arkham Asylum. But yeah, I really think that they went above and beyond with the character interactions in this game. To me, that was the magical moment, is seeing the interactions of Harry and Peter and seeing their friendship. Like, they introduced Harry very, pretty early in the story, and it may have been like a very slow moment in the game, but it really helped build just what kind of relationship Peter and Harry had,
Mm-hmm.
and that helped, like bring in the emotional stakes when you eventually, come across them in a slightly spoilerish way when they eventually cross paths.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I also like even just like the side quests. Definitely, those friendly neighborhood Spider-Man side quests are absolutely like essential to the game. Like, you need to check them out because they may have some of the best moments. Some of the moments that'll just absolutely like give you the good feels, but also give you some of those sad feels as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's the cool thing about it, the one thing I really liked about Spider-Man, just as a character, is like, out of all the various superheroes you can have, Spider-Man is the one that most people can actually relate to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's not rich, he's not particularly handsome. He's always struggling to, manage his work-life balance, as well as being a superhero. He's usually flat broke.
Mm-hmm.
He has those struggles that a lot of people can relate to, and I like the fact that they continue to show those struggles in a game rather than just keep focusing on the action. Granted, the action, like, I agree with you, absolutely flawless. The ability to just fight, fling people in the air, use gadgets, use super abilities that charge when you use gadgets, and like, it's just like, it's a dance.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels so good when you chalk up those like 100 hit combos, and like just are zipping and flying and beat one guy and you zip over to another one and you haven't even touched the ground yet.
Hmm.
It's enjoyable.
Yeah.
I will agree, though, the pacing, they tried to cram a little bit too much. Like, they had good stories, but the fact that it kind of felt like immediately we finish one story, we're quickly jumping into another one.
Mm-hmm.
That could have been better if it was lengthened out a little bit more, but it just felt the third act just felt a little more compacted,
Mm-hmm.
versus the rest of the game.
Yeah. The without spoiling anything right now, like I feel like it's the same issue I had with the first game, where like there's so many interesting things that you could have explored throughout the game, and that you kind of crammed all the interesting bits into the last 2/3 of the third act, and it's like could have spread it out a little bit, or I can't believe this game revolves so much about one character, right? Like there was one character in particular that this game revolved around, that like I was shocked at how much this character was involved in this game up to a certain point. And it's like, okay, I like that, but like the story is over here. Like the interesting part of the story is over here, and you don't explore it enough. And so I don't know. We can get into that in a little bit, though.
I'm so interested to see what
Yeah,
like
which part you're
what's your
saying is
this
the
or that,
interesting
because I
one.
was about to say, I'm like, man, oh my goodness, this is going to be an interesting discussion.
Yeah. So I mean, does anybody have anything else to say before we head into our spoiler discussion?
Yes. Out of all the Spider-Man suits, there's only one Spider-Man suit that was an absolute requirement to wear.
The Wolverine
It,
suit.
no,
Oh.
The Power Ranger suit?
no, the bodega suit.
Oh.
Oh, the with a cat.
Yeah,
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Miles. I swear, like, for about 80% of the game, I used that suit the second I had it unlocked.
Oh, I
Because
sort of forgot about that one, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I mean, it sucked that, like, in the Miles Morales game, that's unlocked only after you beat the story,
Hmm.
and basically it's there for a new game through Plus,
Hmm.
new Plus, whatever. Yeah, but at least they unlock it pretty early in this one. It's like, okay, now I get my chance to have Spider Cat with me. Spider-Man the cat.
Yeah. Spider-Cat.
Mhm.
No, it's Spider-Man.
What
But the
about
cat.
Spider-Ham?
Nope, no Spider-Ham.
You're saving that for the Spider-Verse game.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else, Sebastian? You have any spoiler-free
No, just
thoughts?
like I think people should definitely play this if you're on the fence about it. Like if you liked the first one, or if you're looking for a good game to play this holiday season, I think you should definitely like. I don't think your collection is complete if you like action adventure PlayStation, first party games without this game. So
Mm-hmm.
if you can find it on a sale, everyone just definitely check it out. If you're kind of on the fence about it, like at least wait for a sale, but definitely get it around that $30 marker, if not at full price.
Yeah, I would argue that this game is probably worth full price, to be
I think
honest.
so too. But
I don't like saying that about a lot of games just because I love when sales are going on, like like the Xbox sale right now. There's like 1,000 games that are like 90% off right now.
mhm.
And I'm like, yeah, let's get something. But there are very few games that I would say if you have the money, you should get it at full price. I'm not saying I don't pay full price for
Yeah, for
games,
sure.
right?
I
But I mean,
understand.
some people have less disposable income than some people are more fortunate than others, and uh, so
I'm glad you actually said that, because that was actually a question on our Discord. There was criticism that Spider-Man felt too short for being a $70 game.
That's kind of what I was alluding at too. I think this is definitely worth the price of admission,
yeah.
though.
I'll put the questions in on the doc. I forgot to add them. I was kind of rushing through things this morning, so
No, and I agree with the same sentiment. You can have a $20 game a 20-hour game be $70, and if it is a damn good game,
mhm,
like if it kept me entertained for those 20 hours, I would consider it worth it.
mhm. Yeah.
So
Also, I don't, like I know some people might say Final Fantasy 16, but I don't think there's been any game this year that had this sense of scope and scale that Spider-Man had. And I'm
Yeah.
talking about like flawlessly, because like Spider-Man, like Final Fantasy 16 earlier this year had grand battles where you were fighting these almost like, was it like Godzilla, like Godzilla
mhm.
scaled beings and such, like kaiju like beings, but like this is different because like this is seamless in an open world.
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
like like Insomniac are wizards. That's all I can say. Like, definitely go check this game out, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Let me see. I gotta get these questions in here. Okay, so we're gonna head into our spoiler discussion now. So everybody, you have 5 seconds to get out, and we'll continue our discussion here. So what I was two things that I was talking about earlier in terms of pacing. This is your final warning. Get out now. So the first game, like all the villain, obviously, like the Sinister Six was like the build up in that game, right? With Doc Ock being kind of like the final villain or the final boss fight, right? Um,
I would say Lee was right. Lee was the build up, and then the Sinister Six
Yeah,
was kind of shoehorned in there, right?
yeah, Lee was
well,
the
yeah,
main villain
Yeah.
essentially, and then they're like, "Oh, but we still gotta bring in the Spider-Man, like what
yeah.
people want."
No, I agree. I guess what I mean from like a story standpoint, I almost feel like the like you said, the Sinister Six were shoehorned in when
Mhm.
I feel like there's this point where you're searching for, I think you're searching for Doc Ock in the first game. I'm not 100% sure at this point. It was like 3 months ago and I've played a bunch of games since then, but basically you're in this room and you're reading these dossiers on each of the villains, right? And they all have really
Mhm.
interesting backstories, right? Like obviously Rhino was promised to be removed from the suit, and Vulture has spinal cancer or something, and
Yeah.
they all have something interesting about them on why they're doing what they're doing and why they have they've been promised something to help their situation, right? And so if they do these things, they're promised to get out of certain situations, right? And so I'm like, why weren't each of these villains like a section of the story, and then we find out through playing the story the way that we did with the first villain you fight that you're kind of chasing. Shocker, yes. Like, you know, that part of the game is very small, but you could have had something similar in size or maybe a little bit bigger for each of the villains. They kind of explain that, right? Because Shocker was had some financial situation going on, and he was repaying a debt, and that's why he was doing what he was doing, right? And so I wish in the first game he would have explored the other villains that way. And I know that Lee was really the main focus, at least for 2/3 of the game, right? And then once his story kind of almost wrapped, like you kind of figure out, or Doc Ock kind of reveals himself as who he is, right? And then you're kind of balancing those two stories and kind of shoehorning the Sinister Six in there. And I'm like, I kind of wish something, you know, you could have explored these other villains. And then by the time you get to Spider-Man 2, like you find out some of them are dead when you're Miles and you're captured and you're trying to escape, right, from Kraven. That like some of them are dead and you don't actually get to like
witness that, feel that impact of those deaths.
Yeah. And so that's what I was talking about in terms of pacing, where in this story in Spider-Man 2, like for the first half to 2/3 of the game, Kraven is the main villain. Like, you know, and then obviously when Venom comes out, like, you know, obviously Venom is Venom and he becomes kind of the main thing, but like you're playing through Kraven's story, right? And you're like, oh, well, he has, you know, he's dying. And this is like his last great hunt. And he's looking for that excuse to die. And he's hoping one of these hunts will kill him before his sickness does, right? And that was super interesting. But then it just kind of, you know, Venom kills him in Times Square. And it's kind of like, well, I didn't find out about this part until like 20 minutes ago, and now you're dead. You know, there's no build up to that. I wish they would have revealed that at the beginning and explored it throughout the first part of the story. And then obviously Venom would be his final hunt. And then I think it felt like it would have had more impact. And that was kind of my issue with Spider-Man 2 story overall, is like,
did you get through the hunter bases at all?
I was about to say, did you platinum the game?
No, not yet. I'm on my way to platinum the game, but I have been doing the hunter bases.
The hunter bases dive more into Kraven's story, more specifically about his familiar relationships.
Yeah.
And then it's a very interesting twist in how that all ended.
Yeah. I kind of I mean, I guess this goes into a list of things I wish I knew before I played Spider-Man 2, right? Of like, you know, I wish I would have done these side missions before finishing Kraven's story, right? But again,
it's almost on them for requiring it to be side mission content.
Yeah, villain. I like when side missions add to the story overall. Don't get me wrong, but I don't feel like these side missions did that correctly, if that makes sense. Like you said, the side missions almost feel like an obligation to flesh out the story that you're trying to play through, right? And as someone who thought maybe we would record this earlier than we have right now, or someone who doesn't have a lot of time to play games, and someone who kind of like pretty much mainlined the main story overall and then went back into the side stuff, like that didn't benefit me at all playing through this.
So, is this your first time like doing the like experiencing Kraven's Last Hunt storyline?
Yeah.
Anything? Okay.
I'm not just for like, I'm not a big Spider-Man person at all. Like I was more of like an X-Men person growing up. So like my exposure to Spider-Man was very minimal, unless there was like some sort of crossover, or, you know, like the cartoon. He's in the X-Men cartoon a couple times, right? But
the 90s cartoon?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So like Kraven's Last Hunt is one of the is probably his biggest like not necessarily standalone, but his biggest storyline from the comics. That's kind of what he's infamous for. and not as opposed to him being like a Spider-Man villain, that is. But like, so this adaptation of Kraven's Last Hunt storyline is kind of interesting to see, almost the desperation from it. But the only thing that I like, the only gripe I have about the story in general, on Spider-Man 2 side, is like you said, like they kind of minimize Craven, and his story kind of feels rushed towards the end. Versus, I would have loved to kind of see him become a big bad, become a force that feels like, oh, this is like Spider-Man's greatest antagonist to date. And then that way, when Venom takes him out, inevitably, it feels like, oh snap, like we built this guy all the way up, and now a bigger entity has come along and almost easily dispatched him. How is Spider-Man going to overcome that? Versus, like, they tried to do that, but it was implied. It was kind of implied in the background when you see like Miles going through the base, where he's like, "Oh, he's killed Shocker. Oh, he's killed Vulture. You know, like, oh, he's taken out all these other villains." And like, you wish you kind of, if we would have got to see that, experience that, almost like either through a cutscene, or maybe like Miles is battling alongside like one of these villains, and Craven systematically killing them in front of Miles, like that would have meant so much for us. It would have made Craven feel that much more imposing, as opposed to just a placeholder until we get to the Venom storyline fully,
I wonder if that would have affected the rating, though, if
Oh
they
yeah,
had
for
him
sure.
go like killer. Like that's why they probably only had him kill Scorpion in the cutscene, and then implied everyone else died at the
But the thing is
side.
like, we got to see Venom ate that man. It,
Yes.
like, legitimately, like, ripped that man's head off. Like, if you can do that, you can at least show Craven like stabbing a couple of people. Like, it's not necessarily that you have to show him brutally decimating these people. It's not like I'm telling him to go Wolverine or even like Deathstroke with this. I'm
Yeah.
like, like, if you're there and it's like Miles is trying to gather the troops in the cell, and almost like, instead of you doing the Miles prison break, where you obviously know it's a trap to lead into Miles versus Craven, like maybe Miles is like building up morale to get these villains to kind of like team up together, and then Craven systematically takes out that whole team. Like that would mean so much more, instead of like,
Yeah.
it's almost like, like in wrestling, they say like you have to build someone up, and you can't just imply someone's a badass. You have to build them up and show people.
Yeah.
It's show, not tell. This is almost like that kind of experience here, where they told us Craven's a badass without illustrating that.
Yeah, to that point, like I almost wish like some of the early story missions, or like even leading up to the showdown with Venom and Craven, like either Peter or Miles are going on these missions to search for, because they're not going to fight, Vulture or Scorpion or something. They're going to warn them that like Craven is coming after them, and like when you get there, you see their dead body there or something, or
Pinned to the wall, like Vulture
yeah,
pinned to the wall, or something symbolic of like
yeah,
that character's journey.
yeah,
Where, yeah,
and like that would have been the lead up to, obviously, like the Peter rescuing Miles with the Venom suit, or the black suit, right? And not that I didn't enjoy the Spider Pals stuff with him and Harry, which I wish actually we would have gotten more of that too, but uh, it would have made that escape and Peter almost dying that much more impactful, right?
Yeah, it's, like, one of the biggest things I like, gripes, I guess, about this game that I kind of have is like, it feels like two games into one. Versus like, if this would have gotten that Miles Morales treatment, to where I know a lot of people probably would have been irritated to get like a part 1 this year and a part 2 next year, like next spring, but like, I think the reception for this whole entire game would have been a lot better had like we gotten up to that point where maybe like Peter got stabbed, or like maybe like that would have been like the Miles Morales cutoff point, to where like, oh, that's the end of this part of the game. We'll get part 2 in the spring.
Yeah. I think the struggle with this, like I agree, it's felt like two different stories combined. I think the struggle is they wanted to feature Venom, and you can never have an introduction to Venom without the introduction of the black suit. So it's like, how are we going to fit the black suit in and have that story about like it causing aggression?
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, like, they could have probably extended Venom, and it just would have felt too long, but it's maybe they should have done like split this into two games where it was just focused on Craven, but have the black suit, and then cliffhanger with the black suit going to becoming a Venom
Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe you
later.
killing Craven is like the end of the first game, you know?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I almost wish these were like Miles Morales sized experiences that like really focused on, this is the Spider-Man 3 problem, right, of the
Yeah.
It
movies
really
where
is.
they tried
Yeah.
to cram too many villains into one storyline and tried to fit them all together, and it just didn't work, right? Or I guess the Amazing Spider-Man 2 also, where uh
It's a Venom problem and a
uh-huh.
Spider-Man problem for
Yeah.
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah,
Because
like
there's not a good Venom storyline that doesn't swallow everyone else up around it.
right. Yeah, because like Pat said, you have to introduce the black suit before you introduce Venom. And the only way to introduce the black suit is to fight another villain or group of villains. And it's like, well, there's no. I wouldn't say there's not a good Venom storyline. I would say there's not a good introduction to Venom storyline.
Yeah, it's just what I mean by like there's not a good Venom storyline is I think the best storylines in comic books or comic book mediums are usually like the storyline where everyone kind of feels like they're well thought out and have a good payoff behind them.
Mm-hmm.
And like this storyline and well most storylines that we get with Venom in the comics in like media and video games, if Venom's involved, it's almost to every other character's detriment. Like if you look at Web of Shadows, the video game, like
Mm-hmm.
he absorbs that whole entire video game without anyone else getting really any character development there. It's like if you look at like the comic books, it's like if Venom by nature is involved in a storyline, like even if it's a team up storyline, he kind of takes over the whole entire thing without anyone getting their shine or any like major payoff to them. It is that thing to where like he's so cool in a way that it's almost to his detriment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So that was just kind of my thing, is like the pacing is kind of all over the place, mixed with like there's too many storylines kind of mixing together. And then like they kind of shoved another section of Miles and Martin Lee's storyline in there
Oh,
towards
you didn't
the
like it?
You didn't.
I loved it. I just feel like it kind of it almost came out of nowhere at some point. Although, like, I know there's hints throughout you know, the game where Martin Lee was
Mhm.
here, right? And like him Miles and his mom always are kind of hinting at it, or Peter is telling him not letting it consume his like quote unquote rage or his revenge or whatever. Uh, but I again, I feel like that whole kind of storyline could have blended well with like, okay, if you're going to have Peter and Miles playable in the same thing in the same game, which I kind of thought was almost a mistake in the first place, in my opinion, because
Mhm.
I thought Miles' storyline in this game was more interesting than Peter's, but I feel like he got the short end of the stick because at the end of the day, this is still Peter's story. Like, I feel like Miles got the short end of the stick, even though his story was more interesting.
He
But
plays
the
the B
way,
plot.
but the way Miles is integrated into Peter's story is essential for telling the story that Insomniac is telling. So I don't know. It kind of, there's so many paths crossing that I just feel like they didn't all connect very well. But like going back to the idea of like, okay, so the main villain of part one of this story is Craven. Let's focus on Craven. And then the B story would have been Miles's, or, some sort of story with Miles. And then the second part of the game would be Venom. And then that's where you kind of focus. The B side story would be Miles and the Martin Lee kind of wrap up story. I don't know. I feel like all three stories could have been told better if they were kind of separated differently.
Yeah. It's the almost like comic books stories in general, especially in like ever since the Dark Knight has always been trying to chase that that perfect C and B plot that
Mhm.
integrates well with that A plot, and nothing has really done it as well as the Dark Knight. You know,
Mhm.
it's yeah. I'm talking about the Dark Knight movie. That is,
Yeah.
but like it is absolutely crazy to that we got like all these stories that kind of intersected the way they did, but then like you always every time they go to like Peter's story in like the midsection of the game, at least I always kind of wanted to see, okay, like, well, the interesting things are more so happening around Miles and Maria, because Maria Morales absolutely kills it in this game.
Mhm.
Like, she is a very strong presence in this game that, you know, even though she was introduced in the predecessor, like Miles Morales game, like
Mhm.
her presence in this game is huge, not only in Peter's later story later on, but like the way that she is like almost like the heartbeat of her of like Harlem as well, like,
Mhm.
and how that comes into play with all the side quests. Like, oh, so good, so good.
Yeah. I really love her relationship with Miles also, and like just her overall presence, like you said, it's way more. It feels. I don't want to. It's way less predictable than Aunt May's was in the first game,
Yeah,
and I feel like it's so much more impactful in a way. Not that like Aunt May isn't impactful in any stretch, but like I almost feel like Aunt May was more was more impactful in this game than she was in the other game. Based off the some of the things that were going on in the story, but um,
you don't really remember her except for like the final beat of her, the final moments of her life, though, in the first one.
yeah, she's just kind of Martin Lee's assistant at Feast
Hmm.
and helping people, which is great. But and that's kind of like the lesson Peter took from her in the first game was like always try to help people and
Well,
be the best
she
version
she,
of
she
yourself.
I would feel she introduced the theme of the game when she in the flashback where she was talking to Peter about having balance.
Yeah.
That you can't just work yourself to death. You have to have you have to have some sort of mix of a social work, balance. And I,
Hmm.
I think that kind of laid the groundwork for a lot of the other themes, such as like how much being Spider-Man, how much should I be Peter, how much should I be Miles, focusing on school and focusing on my essay, but at the same time I need to focus on trying to find Lee. The game was all about trying to find that balance. And Venom's part of that is being the finger on the scale that pushed balance in one direction too far. That just, made everything kind of rubber band.
Yeah. Yeah. Um.
That's a good
So.
point. That's a really good point about that, because like themes are so heavy in this game. I
Mhm.
absolutely love it. That's like you said, that sense of balance, that sense of like responsibility versus like your personal responsibility to
Hmm.
yourself versus the responsibility you have to the city. It's like, how do you like, what does great power, great responsibility mean to the like the person, as opposed to just like your sense of duty as Spider-Man. It's
Mhm.
so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, the balance between Peter and Miles, like Miles wants to try and do what he can by himself. Peter wants to do what he can by himself. And, you find the best moments shine when they work together. It's like, can they find that balance where Peter trusts Miles enough to be able to handle his own situation? That was another part of the themes too. Like,
Yeah.
and I think in overall at the end, we definitely felt that Miles matured into his role as the Spider-Man,
Yeah.
and that that's kind of why Peter's like, hey, I think I'm stepping out on this one
Hmm.
during
This
the
is your
like,
city now. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, like the first and like the first ending, I guess, before the mid and end credit sequences, right? Like
Mhm.
they get the like a notification or whatever, and Miles is just like, "You just be Peter for a while," you know.
Hmm.
Well, yeah. At first, they were good. He was like, "Are you ready?" And Peter's like, and that's when Miles like, "Yeah, you just be Peter for
Yeah,
right now."
yeah. And I thought that was like a good setup for Insomniac kind of setting Miles up as like the main Spider-Man now, and I still think Peter is going to have a presence in the third game.
He
which
has to. That
the way
Osborn
the way I
thing.
mean the way the mid and end credit scenes happen, like there's no way Peter can't be involved. But in my opinion, now Insomniac could write away into Miles being, that affecting Miles more than Peter. But
Yeah, I think they are. Man, and it's like it's so interesting how good of storytellers they are, at least at foreshadowing, because like they like this game kind of felt like the Twin Towers, are like that middle like installment, as opposed to like
yeah,
to his detriment, as
yeah,
well as like they've spent so much time like foreshadowing the future. Sometimes they've kind of forgot to like let us like feast in the moment, so to speak. Let us like bask in the moment, and I think that was a little to the detriment of the game. But like, it is kind of hard for middle installments to have that right balance. But I will say, like that scene when Norman's in the hospital and he's throwing the cane, and that whole time, like he's wearing like he has that green, or like light shining on him,
hmm
halfway on him, and he's also wearing green.
hmm
Like so good. The
yeah,
foreshadowing in this game is so good.
yeah. And then he's like, get the G serum ready, and then you see
Hmm.
like him kind of going to test it on himself first, which is obviously probably how Goblin comes out, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then him talking to
Yeah,
Octavius at
actually,
the end too.
it's curious. Do you think the G serum is for Harry, or do you think the G serum is he wants created so that he can take his revenge against Spider-Man?
I
I
think
think it's
it's
more so he can take revenge, right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it'll end up being both ultimately. Actually, I wonder. I've been hearing the term Red Goblin thrown around a little bit. Um, I don't really know
Do
what that
you think they
means.
do Red Goblin more so than Hobgoblin?
It's like Hobgoblin was the next step.
I
Yeah.
I don't know. I heard the term that Norman might be Red Goblin at some point, and then Harry, if he uses it, will end up becoming, you know, a Hobgoblin or a variant of Green Goblin or something.
See, and I don't agree with that because I feel like if they use Harry as the villain again, that's overstaying a welcome. Like, I, I,
Yeah, but if Harry's blaming Peter for what's going on with
I
him
don't
for not
think
giving him the suit back, right? Like,
I don't think he did. I feel that at the end when he like the
Harry
mask
came to
pulls
terms with
back,
it. Yeah.
he understood, and it's like the only way you're going to save us is by destroying or is by killing us, or
Yeah, I think in that moment he did have the hero's clarity moment. What? But like, I don't. I think Harry was smartly kept alive as a thread to keep Peter involved in the third game
mhm.
as
Mhm.
well. And I don't necessarily think it's as a villain per se, because like Insomniac loves to do the like, hey, we're all obviously we're gonna do this villain next, and then they kind of like have a red herring kind of like scenario in the background. And I think like their red herring scenario this time around, like they were advertising Venom and Craven, but like they didn't necessarily portray that we were going to get like the Web of Shadows like Venom. I
Uh-huh.
think it's like like the MacGuffin this time, versus the first game. Like no one knew anything that it was going to be Doc Ock. Like
Uh-huh.
Doc Ock was a complete surprise. So I think they have something up their sleeve, and I think while it is probably going to be goblin centric for most of this game, and obviously wait. I don't want to say too much because Corey, you're still doing the side missions. Like
It's
some of the
fine.
villains
No,
were
this is a
hidden.
spoiler
Okay.
cast. Go ahead. Say what you need to say. I
Okay,
mean,
so I'm like, we got Chameleon coming. We have
uh-huh.
Carnage is also a lot. Like Carnage is also coming in the third game,
Uh,
and then like there's obviously Silk, which is
right.
like it has that anti hero kind of like storyline, and it's also like her. It's very interesting because like her romantic interest in the comics, like when she was introduced, was to Peter.
Uh-huh.
So this is a twist on seeing it more so like Miles is the introduction.
Mhm.
But
She's
yeah,
hmm
she seems
yeah.
younger in this.
I don't think, being younger, I don't. I feel like that'd be Peter dating a high schooler.
oh
Well,
yeah, for sure. Because I'm like in the comics, she was introduced as like they had a chemical like attraction to each other
hmm
because they were bitten by the same spider.
yeah.
But like I can see that like Silk maybe being built by the spider Miles was bitten by, as opposed
Mhm.
to Peter. in
Yeah.
the third game. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's so much foreshadowing or so much like groundwork that they laid for
Yeah.
that third game in this game.
Yeah. I saw more people online freaking out about that scene in Miles' house than the
Mhm.
than the goblin and the goblin scenes or the Octavia scene. Like I was like, oh man, this is
Mhm.
Silk is going to be almost this universe's maybe equivalent to how um Ghost Spider is in the Spider Verse
Yeah.
uh movies. So I
I
don't.
just wonder though, what kind of plot point can you have in the third game that's going to make it feel grander than the symbiote host, taking over New York?
I think you have to go more intimate, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
More intimate of a story than you do with like actually having that big sense of scale. Because
Yeah.
I think that was a lot of people's critiques is like how big the game got versus like the
Uh-huh.
intimacy of the first two games there.
Yeah,
Hmm.
especially Miles Morales, that game, right? Like it's
Mhm.
so like the whole game is set in Harlem
It's a
essentially.
neighborhood. Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
it's incredible. And I think that's the challenge, right? Is like sequels companies have this thing where sequels always need to be bigger, right? And I think that's the challenge here is like how do you create a more interesting sequel without getting bigger but getting smaller? And I think that's what you need to do is get smaller. And I think that would turn a lot of people on to a third game, aside the fact that it's called Spider-Man 3, but you
Yeah.
know, because that's the challenge is like the third game is never loved as much as the second game, Mass Effect, Uncharted, these third games are always like, oh, it feels like more of the same and they're trying to go bigger and it's not quite working. And I think if you tell another personal story, maybe surrounding Silk or Miles and Silk, or just having a quote unquote neighborhood Spider-Man trying to deal with all these things, I think it would be way more interesting. And that's what I really loved about Miles Morales is that it was very personal, with Finn
Mhm.
and their relationship, their flirty kind of friendship, science of partners type thing, and like the way that game ended was like I really felt for Miles, and I think that relationship is a lot of the reason why I love that game so much is just like it felt really personable and super relatable in a lot of ways. So,
Yeah, I think that's it, man. It's like Miles's life of like having to balance out the university
mhm,
and like because he's applying for college, also having to apply like how does his friends fit in that role? Because
mhm,
like one of the things I was going to allude to a little bit ago was just like the way that they can kind of like show us a coin here, but the real stories in their other hand is like in this instance is like in the comic books like Hobgoblin was Mouse's best friend.
mhm.
It was his guy in the chair.
Yeah,
It
It
was
was
his Finn
Genki?
at the time.
Genki.
Genki
Genki's
was
awesome.
What?
Hobgoblin in the comics. So I'm like
Damn! No wonder why people were wanting uh the
the
Holland friend to be like the villains. Like I never understood that.
yeah,
Well,
because
it's
Now it
Genki was
makes sense.
always a villain,
yeah,
like.
Hmm.
And I'm like, there's so much setup here to where I'm like, like is Finn maybe Finn comes back and Finn's that hobgoblin situation to
yeah.
where like she's seen Miles move on, completely forgot about her and such like that, and maybe like especially with the attraction of Silk and like I'm forgetting the name of like the hearing impaired girl.
Haley.
Haley,
Haley.
thank you. I'm like, with Haley in the mix, with Silk in the mix, I'm like, Finn could come back. There's so many ways they can make this a more intimate story
Mhm.
without having it to be a citywide catastrophe.
Yeah, and I
Hmm.
I also think like to that point, like yeah, we're talking about love interests and distractions and stuff. I think there's a way you could do that without it just feeling like a Spider-Man love triangle type thing too,
Yeah.
right? Because that's like the tricky line uh to not cross, right? Is to like, okay, how do we make this love triangle or whatever not
Tasteful.
feel generic and dumb within this universe, right? Because like ultimately playing Miles Morales, I thought somehow Miles was going to save Finn and they were going to end up together, which is what I was rooting for because I really like them together and I love their relationship together up until obviously they find out who each other are and then they end up fighting. But yeah, and obviously, like if there's no body, they're not dead, right? That's the old comic book trope. So how do you bring Finn back in a way that makes sense? How does she deal with Silk? How does Miles deal with a quote unquote, how does he deal with Finn coming back and Haley and Silk? I would aim more towards Finn. And how do they do that without it seeming like, oh, we're pushing the deaf girl aside because she's deaf? Because there's a lot of, obviously there's a lot of PC things that go along with that, like inclusion, like don't push away people that are different. But there's also a lot of challenges, and there's probably a ton of challenges with their relationship, especially communication wise, right? Like, they know sign language and they can text each other and whatever, but like that still doesn't mean there's not challenges in that relationship, right? So how do you deal with that?
How does like starting college at the same time like interrupt all that too?
Yeah.
That's a transitional time for any relationship,
Yeah, and it's not like Miles is a bad looking dude either, right? So first freshman at college, like
we don't know if he's actually even going to college though. They never answer that.
No, but he finally did do his college.
His
essay was essay, right?
That's what I'm wondering. Like, did he finish that?
Yeah, I think towards the end, right? He because he was like narrating a little bit about like who he was.
Okay, yeah. I mean, for me, it almost sounded like, well, maybe he's not doing the college thing. He's going to be the full-time Spider-Man. I don't know. Like, that's what I was wondering. Like, did he? Honestly, in today's society, he probably should go to college.
I would argue that I think just based on the way they incorporate his love of music into this game, that he'll go to college and maybe miss class to be Spider-Man or something.
Oh, for sure.
I feel like that's the way they're going to go. I don't think he would just skip college altogether.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think they would either, but it's just like a thought. Like, was he, maybe pushing it aside so that he can, did he feel more obligated to be the protector than to, better himself, I guess.
Yeah.
No, I think that's the whole thing with his mom though. It was like at least finish, at least like don't lose yourself in pursuit of this as well. Don't forget who you are. And like and I think like that's the college essay was hanging over him the whole entire time. So he completed that. So I don't think they would have did all this build up and not have him go to school at all,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, it's interesting because like Miles's story is always like a mirror of like Peter's younger story, but told differently. And so I'm like, we haven't seen his Gwen Stacy yet. We haven't seen, like his Black Cat, so to speak. We also haven't seen like how does he handle like his first main protagonist in this universe was basically Martin Lee and Finn, arguably. But like, what's that next evolution for him? What's that protagonist that pushes him to the brink where he feels like he needs help, like he needs like a mentor or help in a new sense, not necessarily just clinging to Peter.
Right. And obviously like Prowler is in there too. Like how do you I mean, he's still, in this game he's kind of like quote unquote taking a break from being the Prowler, but he's still the Prowler. Like how do you integrate that back into the story too? Like there's a lot of ways I could see this
side quest.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways I could see this game or this third game being a challenge in terms of all the characters and all the situations they have to incorporate now because of the situation Miles has been put in.
If anyone could get away at this point with doing a part one and people being like okay with it, I think Insomniac could, like they're probably the only studio on the face of the planet right now like that has that leeway storytelling wise and like gameplay wise, where if they put out a new like, oh, this is a part one of a game, expect the full story in 2 installments, I think they can absolutely nail that.
And I almost wonder if that's what the Spider-Verse game would be, is like maybe taking care of some of these problems before they enter a third full game.
Yeah.
The quote unquote rumored Spider-Verse game.
Did you do any of the side quests with like the little spider figures that
Mm-hmm.
you find in the city?
Yeah,
Did you
Yep.
finish that one?
I didn't finish it, but I've done a bunch of them.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that needs to be finished.
Yeah.
Yeah, that very much has some Spider Verse implications in it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm using quotes because all those Insomniac leaks kind of came out recently at the
Of
time
the
of this
Spider Verse
recording,
game.
and I'm really trying to like not encourage people to go look those up. So even though I looked up all the Wolverine stuff, and I'm like, it was my most anticipated game anyway. But like now that I've seen some of it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need this game so bad. It's
So
like the X-Men Origins game,
yeah.
but turned up to 11 at this point.
So speaking of Wolverine, how'd you like the costume of Wolverine in this game?
It was fine. It was funny. It's funny to see that costume on a skinny kid, right? instead of Wolverine, you know. Especially because like all the Deadpool 3 leaks are coming out with Hugh Jackman in that costume, and it's like you go from seeing obviously huge ripped Hugh Jackman to this skinny kid from Harlem in this Wolverine costume, and it's like that's funny.
completely night and day at that point.
Yeah. I liked it though because Wolverine is probably my favorite Marvel character. Just
is there any like suits that really like stood out to either one of you?
I really
mine.
I
actually really like the Miles suit that you get at the end of the game after you finish the campaign.
What? You like that one?
Though there's variants of that suit, and there's this one variant that kind of looks like a nod to Ghost Spider. Has a little bit of pink and white in it, and I think that one looks really cool. I don't know, I really like it.
And that the backlash from like his into what people call like his mouthwash detergent suit at the end is like it's real. And I was shell shocked when I saw that suit, like Miles' suit at the end when he says, "I just need a suit that felt like me," and I was just like, were you blind when you designed it? Like, what happened?
I don't like the main version of that suit, but I like the alternate versions of it a little bit more.
As soon as I got
let his
chance,
hair out in that suit. Come on.
He did. And I admire like showing off a little bit of the Afrocentric hairstyle. But I'm like, bro, as soon as I got a chance, I'm like, I gotta have you in a different suit for the final like boss fight. I can't take you seriously in this get up. But I wonder after the backlash, do you think they keep that suit in Spider-Man 3?
I mean,
as far as like his main suit,
I bet you start out in it, but I bet there's like there's some sort of tech suit that you get, especially because like I think it's very clear that Insomniac is building up to whatever their versions of an Avengers or Defenders style game might be, and he's going to need something more than a spandex suit at some point, like some sort of armored suit, the way that Peter gets in the MCU at some point. But I don't know. At the end of the day, I kind of like the homemade. I'm gonna wear a hoodie and this mask and some tennis shoes and rock that around New York while I beat up bad guys or whatever.
By the way, like the end suit was his Adidas suit. Like Adidas personally sponsored that suit for this game.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I wonder if Adidas had some design input on that.
I would imagine.
Like, clearly the shoes are very Adidas. I wonder if that hoodie is kind of something that they're getting ready to put out to market or is out on the market at this point. But it almost reminds me of like the quote unquote high tech version of his original suit where he had Peter's old mask and then a hoodie and some black shorts and knee high socks and was just running around New York.
That's what it reminds me of with that knee pads that he had on it too. Yeah. That was so bad.
So funny.
Can we talk a little bit about the side villains in Spider-Man 2?
Yeah,
sure.
Like
we can talk about all the villains.
Yeah, because I'm like Tombstone was like one of my favorite villains in the first game, and we got to see him back in this one. And even though we didn't get to fight him, I did like the inclusion of like how they incorporated some of the new side villains into the story, like Mysterio's story.
Yeah.
I enjoyed Mysterio's story. It was, and I enjoyed his boss fight especially.
Mm-hmm.
That was a pretty cool boss fight.
Yeah, I did do all the Mysterio things just because they were like really short, and I was like, okay, I can knock all these out, and then the boss fight was super cool. I like how they introduced him at the Coney Island thing of like,
Hmm.
I'm a reformed supervillain doing some magic stuff, and I don't know, I was really into that whole Coney Island scene in general, but Mysterio was an interesting inclusion into this game, and I like how they kind of integrated Mysterio into Miles' story.
Yeah.
Uh, because obviously Mysterio is very clearly a Peter villain most of the time, at least in my opinion.
But I love that because like it sort of like, even though we have our like faults of Miles almost being relegated to that B story, like all of the stuff that they have in here was all about like reforming.
Hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
and like with Martin Lee, like can Martin Lee be reformed? And then Mysterio has that side quest of like him really trying to reform himself.
Hmm.
Yep. Tombstone as well.
Tombstone as well. So I'm
Black
like,
Cat.
Yeah.
yeah, it's, and Black Cat was a Mao storyline as well. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
it is like they really nailed that theme home, and like showing that Mao's can actually reform a villain in a way that Peter never could,
Hmm.
on a personal note too, was like so impactful to witness,
Hmm. Yeah, and you know, as as a connoisseur of Spidey and his amazing friends on Disney Plus, the children's show, I there's all these villains that obviously like Doc Ock, right? There's
Mhm,
Peter's version of Doc Ock, and then there's Miles' version of Doc Ock, which is the female version, right? And Shocker, um, and there's just they try to do the same villain but in a different way with Miles, and I really appreciate them trying to uh, incorporate the existing villains into probably Miles' future storytelling. Um, just because, like, I think it's kind of lame when they do that in comics where, like, oh, well, there's a new version of Spider-Man, so let's make new versions of his villains instead of just making new villains, you know? And
mhm.
I really appreciated that with, Mysterio, and then obviously uh I'm assuming Doc Ock and Green Goblin will all be the same characters as before, right? I mean, based on what the story has been showing us. So I think that's really cool, especially like Miles is the main Spider-Man now, but all these villains are still out there. It's not like you're just going to magically create the new versions of the same villain. So,
No, no, like I if they use like some Mao's original villains, like sort of like the from all the other ones that you're talking about, some of them you're probably not gonna like because they are just variations, or like like, oh, it's not a scorpion this time, it's a rat, but like
hmm.
their origin story is kind of the same, but like there are some really interesting and compelling Miles Morales like original villains.
Hmm.
I worry that Spider-Man 3 is going to have the movie Spider-Man 3 problem of like
I
there's a
know.
little too much going on,
I
but
know. And this game was very on that line of there's almost too much going on, like we hinted at at the beginning of the show. Uh, but yeah, I agree. I feel like if they don't separate that into at least two games, like even if it's like a Miles Morales sized
I would
interstitial
love for
game
both
before
of them to
three.
be Miles Morales sized.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah. Dude, Miles Morales was so
Well,
perfect. I'm not even kidding.
how
That
how about maybe giving Peter the small game this time and have him finish up the Green Goblin and Doc Octavius, and that's where
Oh,
we then have his story conclude, and then Spider-Man 3 stars Miles,
I mean that
because
was
that way they can
that's
conclude that
bold. I
story.
love that.
yeah,
Hmm.
that would actually be a great idea.
That is bold, but like, so Carnage, like in the comic books, Carnage is one of like Miles' big story, like big antagonist. So it's like Ultimatum is another one of like his main like antagonists, who basically like is almost like Wilson Fisk in his world, except like Ultimatum is like wearing he's wearing the stolen gear from other like superheroes. So like he has Ant-Man's gear. He has some like he has like Iron Man's chest armor, Ant-Man's like shrink ability. He has like the Wasp
Is he the
Stinger.
anti Miles? Like
No,
I remember that Miles had a villain that was essentially not the Spider-Verse villain, but
mhm.
he had a villain where like the Miles and Peter's reality is actually like a supervillain.
There are some that is like the anti Mouse, so to speak, because there's one villain called the Assessor in Mouse's story, to where like he's an AI that sometimes like portrays himself as Mouse,
Hmm.
like, but he's an AI in like the Clone Saga. He kind of like he's orchestrating things behind the scenes. Then you also have like Raheem Rashad is like Ramble, who's like a who's very much like, she's also like a student at Brooklyn Vision Academy, the like school that Miles goes to in Spider-Man 2, and she has like is kind of similar bioelectric powers that he does,
Hmm.
except like like instead of her having that abilities like naturally, she creates like machines and such like that kind of gives her that ability. But then she also has like this technopathic skills, to where like instead of controlling things with her mind, she can only control technology around her. So I'm like, she kind of can mimic Spider-Man's abilities using technology.
So like Syndrome from The Incredibles.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly, in Disney explanation, that's exactly who that is.
Yeah.
So there's so many like original villains that they have. It's just like they already have set up so many like interesting ones in Spider-Man 2, because I'm like, you have Chameleon, who has a direct relationship with a villain in this universe already. You also have like Carnage. You also have Yuri. Like, let's be real here, she's kind of a villain, so I'm like,
Yeah.
you also have Yuri, you also have like Simon Krieger, who's the original villain from that was like the Roxxon guy from the Miles Morales game. I'm like, he's not dead.
Yeah.
So you have a possible Finn, possible Prowler. There's so many ways they can go there.
Yeah. I just looking at all the tendrils that are going on here. I hope they pick the parts that are important and kind of leave out the parts that aren't, because they're going to find themselves
Overwhelmed.
either this game's going to be massive, or they're just going to find a lot of problems in a 20-hour experience, right? I mean, so
Yeah, like the idea that was spoken earlier about there being three spider people kind of feels
Hmm.
like it's needed at that point.
yeah. Which
Yep, we're gonna have 3 spider people.
yeah, and if there's a Spider-Verse game and they introduce, Gwen at some point, or even if they want to bring in Spider-Man 2099 at some point, or like there's a lot of possible ways they could go, and I hope they stay away from that. Honestly, I want them to focus on Miles.
I do too.
I I I really want them to focus on Miles and him being the character and really the only focal point, aside from maybe some Peter interactions and whatever. But they need to focus on what's important to Miles' story in the third game.
So we've been talking a lot about Spider-Man 2. I mean Spider-Man 3. What do y'all think of like actually playing as Venom in Spider-Man 2?
That was interesting, and I'm curious why they just had like, we're gonna build up Venom, show you each one of his abilities, get to the fight with Craven, and then you're never gonna touch that again.
Yeah. I thought it was I honestly thought that it was kind of a waste, to be honest. I wish the escape from the building would have just been a cutscene.
Oh yeah.
Like I mean, it was fine, but you can only you can only mash buttons for so long. I just felt like it was
It
really
was
drawn
too
out,
long.
and Venom's quote unquote special abilities aren't cool enough to like in that situation at least to use all the time. And uh I really thought the fight with Craven could have been just a cool cutscene that you could have seen. Maybe you don't see Venom until like Craven's about to die, and then that would be the reveal of Venom, almost like the real reveal of Venom, like the way that the Incredible Hulk did in the MCU movie, where he's working in the bottle factory and like it's real dark, and you don't see the Hulk until that first fight is almost over in the bottle factory. So that I wish they would have done something more like that for Venom. I think it would have made Venom a lot scary, at least the reveal a lot scarier. But at the end of the day, I wish all that. I wish they wouldn't have let you play as Venom and then not let you play as him again ever.
It's funny you say the Hulk, because like playing as Venom in this game reminded me of that 2000 Hulk game from back in the day.
Ultimate Destruction.
Yeah, that's exactly what it reminded me of.
Yeah, that game was cool.
I love jumping in that game.
It's so fun.
Just like,
yeah. Give Insomniac the Hulk next, Marvel.
I mean, we basically got it here. Like, just take out the tendrils and such like that. And you're pretty much good to go. Make them green.
Yeah.
But no, that's so interesting. Like, I sort of loved the experience when it first came up, but like you said, it sort of drug on. It felt like the bit felt almost like an hour long, and it should have been maybe 20 minutes. But
if you're gonna do it, don't make it that long. And I almost wonder if that was just padding to say, hey, the game is longer now. And that often hinders games, I feel like, for the most part.
Or maybe they wanted to incorporate Venom more into the game, but then it's like, no, you have to wrap the game up.
Maybe.
Like, maybe that, like, because Venom was only the last 20% of the game. Maybe it was meant to be longer. I don't know. Unless
they were just trying to get some mechanics down for a game where Venom might, if that multiplayer game that they're working on is the Spider-Verse game, and Venom, they already have Venom mechanics. Like, could Harry just be one of the spider people that you're fighting against or fighting with?
They announced the New Game Plus stuff recently, and it's been said that they're allowing people to replay levels just because that's such a heavily requested part that people want to go back and replay.
Yeah.
But like, Insomniac has a history of not doing, like, there's always a reason why they do things. Of like, oh, this always builds into a mechanic that we're working on, or like with everything they did in Ratchet and Clank, you can say like, oh, that like the warping system from different dimensions like kind of led into the fast travel that we saw in Spider-Man and such. There's always like something there. So it feels like there's a certain reason why that was included. That part was included in this game, other than it just being cool.
Yeah. I mean, story purpose wise, it's impossible to bring Venom back. Like, he at the very end, Venom disintegrated. He got anti-venomed.
Yeah, there's always a part of Venom somewhere, and that, I mean, Carnage's origin is based on Venom. So,
well, yeah, Carnage's symbiote, still exists out there, but Venom itself, like, that one got disintegrated.
Here's my question: is like, what are they gonna do with Peter? Does he still have the anti-venom like permanently going forward?
Right.
I would hope that gets removed, because that feels a little OP. But
yeah, I mean, maybe Peter's not playable at all, and then you just don't have to worry about it. Maybe Peter only shows up in specific story instances, and maybe if you're gonna have a second playable character, maybe that's where Silk comes in.
Oh, that'd be nice. I will say about a gripe about Spider-Man 2. I sort of didn't like the enemy variety when Venom basically took over the city.
Oh yeah,
I hated some of those.
Got
Venoms.
The green one. That's purple one.
Yeah, that's where
the red one.
That's where the game kind of was like,
and the black one with the red on it. That's how you know that was the powerful one.
Yeah, and then
like I hate the Hulk one. Yeah,
yeah, the big Hulk ones. Yeah, it's like that's where the game kind of took a turn for me. It was like, okay, this is a little ridiculous. Having I was like, okay, the hunters are cool. Random.
It's kind of like having the supervillains or the mutants run around at the end of the first one.
Yeah. Kind of, yeah, but like I was like, man, do they really need this enemy type when you already have the Sandman villain enemies from like the fractured memory stuff? You already have the hunters. I really like the Sandman missions too. you already have the hunters. You already have random just criminals running around. Like, do we really
And the
need?
flame cultists.
Yeah, yeah, that too. Like, do you really need the Venom, the symbiote enemies running around too? Like, that seemed like a little much. Uh,
And some of these weird random people were becoming like Hulk Venoms, and I was just
yeah,
like, you beat these down, and it'd just be like the same like skinny NPC person, and
yeah,
I'd be like, how did
yeah,
this person become a Hulk?
yeah. How did
Like,
this grandma turn into this crazy big hulking Venom symbiote?
especially since Mary Jane became
Scream.
like Scream, and I'm like, okay, so she has a very specialized one. Why is everyone else these 5 generic ones at this point?
Yeah. Uh, yeah. I wonder if MJ still has some Venom in her too. You know.
Yeah, what'd y'all think about
That's
that boss
okay.
fight, by the
I'm
way?
pretty sure Peter would, anti-venom that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you know what I mean.
Oh God. Okay. The Scream fight was. I thought the fight was okay, but I think it taught you a very important mechanic against the symbiotes, which was the sound stuff.
Mhm.
Which I think was basically that was the point of that fight. But I thought it was really long and really unnecessary. Uh, I don't understand why that was like a quote unquote main boss fight. With 3 life bars and chasing her around the neighborhood, and um, it was fine. Don't get me wrong. I thought the character design is cool and everything, but incredibly unnecessary. And that's
I
that I felt that way with a lot of this game. Was like, there's cool parts, but a lot of it was either drawn out too long or very unnecessary. The lizard part, which we haven't touched on either, like chasing lizard through the
which one?
city.
Oh, that was really cool.
Mhm.
That was really cool.
Yeah, that whole thing was super cool. Uh, but I just felt like the lizard storyline was being drawn out too long for being a side story, you know? And then going back to Dr. Connors when Venom is actually like revealed and you trying to get the Venom suit out of you, or, you know, Dr. Connors had a lot to do with the Venom stuff, to the point where like I don't even know if we needed Lizard in this game at that point.
It
Do you
was
find it
cool to
weird that
see
they?
how he lost his hand, though.
Yeah. Did you find that weird that it's like, oh, he lost his hand because of Venom?
Yeah.
It's like he could have just lost his hand by a car accident. You didn't have to like tie that in.
Yeah.
No, but and then like this, and I know Peter was like not acting like himself, but when he was just like, I can see why your family left you. I was like, dang man, did you
Yeah.
have to go there?
Jeez. Yeah. Can we talk about Angry Peter for a minute? Like,
Yeah,
Angry Peter is really weird to witness, not because like uh that voice actor is a bad
weird.
Peter. I actually think he's a pretty great Peter Parker, but like Angry Peter, man, it's got some James Franco Spider-Man 3 goblin energy
It
to
does.
it. It's like, oh my gosh.
All it's missing is the dance number at this point,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, he had the black turtleneck.
I know.
Mhm.
God, man, every
Waking
time.
up on the park bench with the black suit. It's like, what?
Yeah. Man, every time I think of Spider-Man 3, all I think of is James Franco's terrible delivery of like, I'm gonna, what does he say? He's like,
I'm gonna throw dirt in your eye, or I'm gonna put some dirt in your eye.
no, he's like, I'm gonna kill your little ass or something. And I'm like, that
Yeah.
sounds really bad and oddly sexual.
It did not age well.
Yeah.
Age well at all.
No, it did not. So,
No, but I want to touch on something real quick. What like one of the big criticisms of the Spider-Man 1 was the Mary Jane missions.
mhm.
What y'all think of those this go around?
I actually really liked them this time. Like, they give you a weapon
Phenomenal.
though, right? Like the
Mhm.
taser makes those missions way more interesting instead of just like sneaking around. But the first time you do it in the camp, I thought the one in the first kind of major one in
The zoo.
yeah,
The
the
zoo, yeah.
zoo is like,
Mhm.
I thought that was really cool, and I really liked sneaking around the camp and her kind of using her the stuff she learned from Silver Sable
Mhm.
to kind of work her way around all that stuff too was really interesting.
I loved it, and I also like that's sort of like when we started getting the backstory of like what happened to the villains that encountered Craven and why he came to the city in the first place. But like, yeah, it almost felt like Naughty Dog. It was just like this is how we did The Last of Us. You can use a little bit of the stealth from The Last of Us in this game too, if you would like.
Yeah, which is great.
I love it. I absolutely love it. But no, man. And then they like every time I felt like it was going to be monotonous, they just add another gameplay mechanic to her stun gun.
Yeah, yeah.
Now it
cool.
shoots. Now it shoots screamy powers.
Yeah. And then she shot webs. And I was like, oh, she has a web shooter now. And I'm like, that kind of makes sense considering he's not like organic, like like Tobey Maguire. So I'm like, oh, this feels thought out versus like. It feels like they actually said, like, we're going to make y'all like these missions. I know y'all hated these in the first one, but we're going to make y'all like it this time around.
But that's what I like about Insomniac is that they took the criticism, and I think they liked the way that those missions broke things up in the first game, but they didn't quite hit the way they wanted them to. And I think that they took that criticism and they're like, okay, how can we make these a little bit better and more engaging for the player? Even if you're not swinging around the city as Spider-Man, you can still feel like you're, MJ is kind of contributing to the mission and contributing to the story in a way that feels fun and engaging. And Insomniac has been really good about that, right? I mean, even since Sunset Overdrive, right, where like the movement and stuff from that, they took some of the, I don't want to say criticisms, but some of the what people said, this could have been a little bit better, or this could have been, whatever. And they applied it to Spider-Man and the first one. And then, that game felt great. And then this game feels amazing. And they
just need one that feels spectacular.
Yeah. But
then finally have the ultimate one.
Oh, geez.
I love it. Let's keep it going.
Ultimate Spider-Man, though, on GameCube. Oh, that game was great.
That was pretty sweet. Also Venom-centric story.
Yeah. True. So, yeah, I mean, Insomniac's always been great at that, I think, over the years. And I'm glad they really took that to heart and fixed these things.
Speaking of taking something to heart, because like I felt like one of the criticisms they had from the first game was like a lot of people kind of complained about the boss battles. But I felt like the boss battles were so much better and like had so much of a better flow this go around, because like I think the first game a lot of people complained about the bank boss battle a lot, and I don't think we got anything of that magnitude at all in this game.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, this obviously the opening with Sandman was like the opening. The opening Sandman fight felt a lot. The feeling I got was this is one of the best openings since God of War 2, like on PS2. That God of War 2, where you
God of War 3 was better than God of War 2.
I was about to say that reminded me of God of War 3. Whenever you were like climbing the Titan trying to fight Poseidon at the very beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I always think of God of War 2 as like one of my favorite openings of all time. And yeah, God of War 3 is great too, but that's just where my mind went, was God of War 2, where it opens with this huge boss battle type thing. And, Cory Barlog did an interview, I think right before God of War came out in 2018.
2018, yeah.
And he said, when they were developing God of War 2, they didn't develop the opening until that was the last thing they developed, because everybody was firing on all cylinders. Everybody knew what they were doing. And that's really what it felt like. This opening felt like everybody was firing on all cylinders. They knew what they were doing. They had that scale planned out. It was great. That opening with Sandman was awesome. The lizard fight was interesting. The chase through the city was cool. I thought like the mechanics of fighting Lizard were a little obtuse, but ultimately like interesting.
I
was
could
fun though.
never open the grates when he was on them.
I know.
Like, I swear he was on it for just a split second, and it took too long for your webs to pull it.
Yeah, I was a little slow. My timing was a little slow, but I'm attributing that because I'm old, and my reflexes are terrible.
My strategy there was like, you know how like you could web him up like the 6 times and he would like struggle with the web for a second.
Mhm.
So I'd do like 5, and then when he lands on the grate, then I'd hit that 6 and he'd be struggling to take that web off, and then that's when I'd pull the grates.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did the web on the wall and made him fall. That was pretty much my best strategy.
Yeah.
What so I wanted to ask you what y'all think of the some of the other boss fights that we gotten because we did get to fight quite a few of them here this go around.
I did enjoy Wraith.
Mm-hmm.
Just because that one felt very personal. With like her anger being directed at Spider-Man and Spider-Man not wanting to hurt her, but at the same time they're in a burning building, and it just like it I liked that because it felt like the stakes kind of meant something there.
Yeah.
And the way her digs at him whenever they were talking about like, I'm always the one who had to worry about like the mortgage and this and like, oh man, that it was so personal, it was so intimate. I loved it.
Yeah. It was I really like how like the symbiote stuff kind of brings out like the characters it was infecting, like really brought their truths out, like how they felt, their anger and their kind of, this is how I really feel about it, or this is how I have felt about it in the past, and you didn't do anything. And obviously it's relatable because we all feel that way to an extent about certain things, either with partners or friends or, whatever. But when it's said out loud, it feels more real and more impactful. And I think that was really, really great. I also, the Venom fight overall,
At the high school.
like the high school part, and then like when you're like really fighting Venom towards the end on like when you're fighting Venom as Miles, right, is like really in
the Foundation.
Yeah, the Foundation. Thank you. And the fact that Venom has wings, I was like, oh my gosh, when did Venom
Why
get wings?
did Venom have wings?
I was like, this is a lot going on right now.
But how did he get the ability to just like tendril the whole city if we're talking about like ridiculous things at that point?
Well, that one was the meteoroids doing.
But
I was like, man, the whole city in like an instant though.
Yeah, you know what I like about that too is like Avengers Towers right there, and like what are the Avengers doing? That they just like close the blinds and are just like, you know what, we're just gonna wait for a while. Oh man, that always makes me laugh when something huge is going on and you just see Avengers Tower just sitting there and it's like, where's Iron Man and everybody?
They're like, this is not our business.
Yeah.
Then you also saw the Baxter Tower too.
Yeah.
That was kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of like, speaking of cameos, that Black Cat mission where you actually got to interact with Wong and like the Doctor Strange like teleportation.
Yeah.
Where
that was cool.
Staff, that was so cool.
Yeah, that was super cool. That makes me think that this universe is about to open up, either in the Wolverine game or soon after.
Or that we need a Doctor Strange game.
I was about to say, I'm like, man, Sony Santa Monica basically has been doing a whole lot of different things that could easily translate into a Doctor Strange game at this point.
Yeah, I just a side tangent. Like, can we just give Disney credit where credit's due of them, like essentially giving the studios the right IP to work on, essentially, like,
yeah.
Insomniac's doing great with Spider-Man. I think Eidos Montreal killed it with Guardians. I think Crystal Dynamics, aside from like the live service stuff, I really thought the single player of the Avengers was pretty good.
The Kamala,
the Kamala storyline was really good. And then obviously like the Star Wars stuff has been really great financial issues at the beginning of
I
that.
feel like that's what made Disney like a little more attentive in their games was after Battlefront 2. They're like, okay, we're gonna have to focus a little better.
Yeah,
No, but missing one here. Ultimate Alliance 3 for the Switch was really good.
Yeah, that was really good. And by all accounts, like the Avatar game that came out is not terrible.
The Avatar game right now is actually freaking amazing.
I mean, I hear it's like if you like Far Cry.
I was about to say it's Far Cry.
It's Far Cry, but it's an alien world, and it's actually got a pretty decent story going on.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's be honest though. I'm like, it's kind of the same formula they've been doing though with
it's the Ubisoft formula, though, right?
It's the Ubisoft formula. Yeah.
If you took Far Cry and mixed it in with Horizon, that's more what this one feels like, or at least more the primal side. Like
Horizon,
you don't
was
have
much
all the
third-person Far Cry in a sense too, though. So.
Yeah, but in terms of the weapons, like you're mostly using bows in this one.
Yeah.
Versus like automatics, even though there's an assault rifle, it just
Far Cry Primal.
That is Far Cry Primal. Yeah, I was about to say this is the Far Cry formula to the T, man.
Yeah. It is.
But
they work it well.
Yeah. So
on the spot. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say shout out to John Drake and the team at Disney Interactive and Lucasfilm Games and Marvel. Like, great job distributing. That gives me really high hopes for Blade and Indiana Jones and the Star Wars game that comes out next year that I always forget about the name.
Outlaws.
Yeah,
by Ubisoft as well.
Yeah. I always want to say Outpost, but I know that's always wrong. So the one thing we haven't talked about in the hour and a half we have been sitting here is Harry's overall storyline itself and his and Peter's relationship. I mean, we've touched on it, but like, I kind of want to dive into it and kind of talk about how the Venom storyline has changed because it's affecting Harry now and not Eddie Brock. So
yeah, I mean, it's one of those like 50-50 things to where like Harry in the comic books has been Venom before, so I like it didn't quite shock me about the transition there, but I thought they played it off really well with like the scene where he finds out his mom died was it hit me so hard.
Yeah,
loved that scene.
Yeah,
and them going through the high school together and being like teens on like a not really dangerous but very low stake, but to them it's the end of the world kind of thing scenario, but like it felt intimate. It felt like it meant something, and to see how all that came crashing down for Harry and Peter being there at Harry's most vulnerable moment of his entire life and up to that point was it was so well done the way they told that story.
Yeah, I really like Harry's character in this. I feel like it's I feel like they did a great job with Harry. I also like the Spider Pals sequence, and the nod to Agent Venom was really cool. I love
the furnace theme.
The what? Yeah,
the furnace.
Yeah.
Yep.
I really like that. I would like a whole game surrounding that moment, to be honest, like a whole 5-hour kind of DLC for that. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I like how even though Venom was a villain, Venom's thoughts were not villainous. Like, you had the symbiote itself, who's only wanted to preserve itself. It mostly freaked out because like he heard the word he was going to be destroyed, but he also amplified Harry, even though twistedly, Harry's obsession to try to save the world. And this was what like his Venom symbiotic mind came up with, and able to eliminate all illnesses and inequality and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's the old homage of like what they said is like the best told villains is the ones we can relate to, and it's like they made Harry and by proxy Venom was like so relatable because like there was always that like underlying thing of like maybe if Peter would have communicated better, or like maybe if Peter would have like done things a little differently, like this is a lot of what Harry was going through, like not disease aside, was like Peter probably could have handled the situation a lot better. And Peter is also the one who creates a lot of his villains, like his worst situations is by his own making. And this was one of those kind of like tales of like Harry was a bad guy in this, and in no form is he absolved from all of his behavior, but like a lot of this is like he reacted based on like the information and the situations, whereas Peter could have handled everything differently,
Yeah, and I this goes back to where we were talking about how a lot of the story of this part of the story, at least, was kind of shoved to the back third of the game, where I kind of wish we could have explored a little bit more with Harry and watch his as he physically got better, maybe mentally started to deteriorate a little bit, like, kind of evolve the way that Peter did a little bit, where he started saying we instead of I, and, kind of started
I
projecting.
wonder how much of that was the symbiote, though, because I feel like the symbiote was already like pissed off at that point and like just fully took over.
Yeah, what, with Peter?
Well, yeah, with Peter, and then like it moved from Peter over to um, Harry, but like the symbiote has grown since then and understands that now it's in danger.
Yeah, but I just wish we would have got a little bit more of the symbiote starting to show itself within Harry before he transferred it to Peter to save his life a little bit, I guess.
Starting to at least see his dark side
Yeah.
a little bit, like some of his warts, because like
Yeah.
if maybe like something in the lab goes wrong and maybe he reacts a little like more viciously or more like outburst than he should have, to kind of portray that, oh, there's something amiss here with the symbiote in general, versus, oh, Peter got it, now this whole thing is a bad thing,
Exactly.
Well, also, I think, though, to explain that away, Dr. Connors was taking a very, very strict like observation on it, and again, like I don't think the symbiote like hadn't felt like it was threatened until Dr. Connors says we need to destroy it. Like I think that was where, well, okay, maybe no, he was starting to portray the aggressive symptoms before then.
Yeah, but I think something you could have done with that, even though Dr. Connors had a watchful eye over Harry and making sure everything was going correctly and doing, what it was supposed to do, like maybe that would show how powerful the symbiote is like no matter how much you watch it and can try to control it and contain it, like it's still going to, affect you in some way and even come out at some point.
It goes back to the old adage of show not tell, man. It's like you kind of like, we infer based on like previous knowledge at the very beginning of meeting the symbiote that the symbiote's bad news, but like we would have loved to see some foreshadowing elements of like, oh, this is like, it's not just Peter, it's like everyone's problem. It brings out the best and worst in everybody, you know.
Now, do you feel like maybe if they added 10 more hours to the story part, do you think that would have helped like smoothed out some of these?
It probably would have felt dragged on at that point.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. It's like, where was the balance?
I mean, I don't think you need 10 hours to do that. I think you could have done it in maybe, 2 to 3 missions with little interstitial cutscenes in the middle of interacting, especially like the Spider Pals segment where Harry kind of finds out Peter is Spider-Man and they're working together, and maybe Harry goes a little too far in a section, and then maybe in that first mission goes like quote unquote perfect, right, of them, and then the second mission they do, Harry goes a little too far and
breaks a leg, man, just breaks a leg or something,
and then like the third section, like you see the anger come out when he goes a little too far, because he's like, maybe he yells at Peter, be like, I'm trying to save their life or something, like the anger comes out, and like maybe that's how you show it, and then then maybe that's where you transition into going into the zoo and the Craven fight and everything.
Or maybe it's one of those things to where like if you did have to pat on something, it's like show where Miles and Peter like took on a villain and that villain got away. Like that villain got like let off the hook, because that would tie into Peter's like angst of like, no matter what I do, all these villains keep coming back. Like I keep, like with the Martin Lee thing, it's like he always feels that responsibility and burden whenever they're in Peter, like whenever they're showing like when Miles is like fighting all these people and he said they're endless, and he said this is how Peter feels. Like the endless struggle of like these same villains are keep coming back, like I keep doing something about it and they keep getting let go, or like they keep escaping, and like it's an endless cycle for him. I'm like, maybe you could have had Harry feel just a little bit about that. Like maybe one of these throwaway villains like Vulture or someone could have been like, oh, like, or Vulture, we captured Vulture at the very beginning. Vulture is like got let off the hook because of a technicality, and then you get to see Harry's frustration, like show, like he slams the desk and the desk breaks, and it just kind of, and then with that, Tony Todd did a phenomenal job here, but maybe you could have had his voice come out like at that time where he goes, damn it,
like even like an aggressive kind of tone from Harry, but maybe like their voices are kind of merged, the way that like Hayden Christensen and James Earl Jones did in the Obi-Wan show, right? Like you hear both of them at the same time somehow, and it's like, oh, okay, it's about to get serious in, an hour or so.
Yeah, it's just little details. It's like some little things they could have did better with the story here. But I want to shout out like a side quest that we haven't talked about, like Harold from the first game. Like the pigeon guy. Oh my goodness! Like if it flying through the city, like after like his
You
pigeons.
might want to cover your ears, Corey.
Well, I mean, it's fine.
Okay.
Spoilers after like outside of the main story don't bother me.
Okay, gotcha. Like Harold, man, like chasing after his pigeons in the first game was probably one of my biggest annoyances in the first game. Because I just hated the redundancy of it. It felt pointless. But then, like in the second game, he comes back in a side quest that is like probably is one of those moments in video games that's going to stick with me for a long time. It's like like the way he releases those birds and you're flying through the city and they're kind of like letting you play with the gust mechanic that we haven't talked about yet, the flying, like the gliding mechanic. You're kind of flying around with these pigeons. They have this beautiful music that is very curated towards this one moment, and then you come back and you find out that Harold's gone, like that he passed away, and it hit me. Like I teared up so hard.
I saw that coming. I'm like, oh no. Yeah. Like he's talking about taking a journey. Oh, what kind of journey you taking? I'll tell you when you get back. It's like he ain't getting back.
No. No, but it's the delivery though. Like you said, it's kind of foreshadowed and it's almost like it hits you over the head a little bit, but like the fact that they made you care about this guy who's like was probably my biggest annoyance, like on an NPC level in the first game, and then I just he was so human in the second game though. Like it was that in 5 minutes they made me care about him more than they had in in an entire section earlier with like all these villains that they're introducing, or like all these people that they're introducing in the second one. I'm like, man, that was a masterful like side quest.
Yeah,
there was another side quest that was pretty good.
The grandfather one.
The grandfather one, yes, with the Alzheimer's.
That was I actually just did that mission last night, and it was man, that hits home for me, just because like I watched my dad take care of his parents as they, my dad's dad had Alzheimer's really bad and lived probably way longer than he should have with that, to the point where like at one point he was living over at his parents' house taking care of both of them. His mom was kind of sick, but his dad was like really the bad one. And then when his mom passed, like I remember my grandpa moving in with us and him kind of living in our office area. We had a room for him, and just watching that happen and my dad going through all that was like that part hit me really hard just because of living through watching someone that you care about deal with that, and it's tough to watch people you love kind of go through stuff like that.
Insomniac killed it with
Mm-hmm.
that theme of grief in this game too, because I'm like the when Martin Lee escapes with the way Miles still feels that, and the way Miles is still going through like the loss of his father as well, like their sense of grief and causing empathy in moments that are extremely relatable is really well done in this game.
Don't forget Martin Lee's story,
Oh
like
yeah,
how much he absolutely regretted what he did.
Redemption,
Like, yeah,
second
it's like,
chances.
I never meant to hurt, Aunt May. Like, she meant the world, Feast meant the world, and he, screwed it all because he absolutely needed to have his revenge against Norman, and how he wishes that could have been so different.
oh man, and like to bring it home, the part that really hits me about the Martin Lee thing is like Martin Lee in the first game did everything he did because Norman not only in the experiments took away like his ability to be a normal person, but also like Norman took away his parents as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that was like Martin, he was just like, you destroyed my life and my family, was what Martin Lee's motivation was. And then to see when he figured out who Miles is, that he had did the same thing to Miles, where he took away his father, that Norman had done to Martin Lee, and Martin Lee's reaction, the visceral, like, oh my gosh, I'm the monster that I wanted to get revenge on. It's like that moment. Oh, so good,
Mm-hmm.
so good,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so good. But man, this is like, and like I know we went back and forth about like some of the faults and such like that, but like I'll repeat it, man. I don't think I had like this much fun with a game and like really had these emotional beats with a game this year as much as I did with Spider-Man, for all the gripes that I had about it.
Yeah, I would say like this year the only game that kind of comes close in terms of actually playing the game would have been Hogwarts Legacy.
Mhm.
I really enjoyed that game a lot this year, but Spider-Man plays a lot better than that game, and just Insomniac has the special sauce when it comes to playing like the way games feel, and man, I'm really excited to see how the mechanics work for the Wolverine game now. And I guess we can kind of, unless anybody has any final thoughts about story or side missions or want to talk about anything else within the main game.
I mean, we can go all day.
I know,
The Haley's thing
I
was
know.
the Haley mission was really cool.
Oh, the
Like,
Haley mission was
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Do
yeah,
we
I
want to talk
was,
about that real quick?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Sebastian, why don't you go first?
Man, I just love the sense of like, well, the loss of sense, so to speak, of like
Mm-hmm.
how they made me feel, that how they made me feel almost like she would, so to speak. It's not quite the apples to oranges. Of course, you can't do all that, but like that sense that you have when you're playing with the dual sense, and like there's always that hum in the air and
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
such like that. Oh man, it was cool. It was really cool. It was like it was a gutsy swing.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't, like for a lot of people wasn't necessarily like something that they loved, but I'm glad they attempted it because like it feels like they took a swing and it paid off.
Hmm. It feels this section really felt inspired in like an opposite way of like Hellblade.
Hmm.
'Cause, Hellblade, they recommend you wear headphones, and like you hear the voices in front of you, behind you, and sometimes they trick you or whatever. And it really felt like that type of interaction of sound or lack thereof was heavily like this felt inspired by that kind of uh innovation, I guess.
I really liked how they used the haptic feedback
Hmm.
So
in
good.
this. Like, because you played as a death person, there was no sound or anything going on. But when people were playing music, you felt the vibrations in the controller.
Hmm.
And that, to me, was actually like really awesome.
Yeah, they did a great job.
Mhm.
I It just shows that Insomniac cares, even if they miss, on something. Like they tried and they did something unique, you know. And you got to give them all the credit for that.
Yeah, and I mean, it just also, like, I know we're not talking about like the grand scheme of 2023 here, but like it's a book club about Spider-Man 3, but like I know like some of the discourse this week, as of this recording with the Game Awards, is like, damn, Spider-Man didn't win any awards, but I'm like, man, that's what type of year this was though, too, you know, like I think, you know, like I'd said it once, I'm like, Spider-Man might be my favorite experience this year, but it's not the best game of this year. You know, it's the way the cookies crumbled, man.
Yeah. I mean, you got an awesome new 2D Mario game. You got another Zelda game, Diablo, Final Fantasy, a new Fire Emblem game, Hogwarts Legacy, Baldur's Gate.
is
Like,
different. Yeah.
every 2 weeks it felt like a new game was coming out that had the potential to be game of the year. And Spider-Man just happened to fall in this year, you know, and you know, it probably any other year probably would have won 2 or 3 of the awards it was nominated for, but you know,
It's just where the cards fell.
yeah,
It's the PlayStation curse right now, because I'm like, God of War got that, Horizon got that, you know. I'm like, they're putting out banger after banger. It's just like, yeah, there's always something, another monster that kind of like takes them out though.
Yep. So we talked about kind of what we wanted from a Spider-Man 3 game. We kind of already mentioned the Wolverine game. We do have a couple questions. Remember, you can either go to the question thread on Patreon, or you can go to our Discord, and we'll answer your questions there. Cordy Yikes writes, and she asks, your opinion, what will be the update for Spider-Man 2? What will it look like? What do you want out of it? I think maybe she means any potential DLC for the game too.
Okay. I think I'll go first. I feel Carnage could just be a DLC.
I hope so.
Like, you know, let's end the symbiotes and not have them carry on over to the third game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's
I hope so. Same here.
Yep, I agree with you. I would also like to maybe kind of wrap up Black Cat's storyline, as much as, you know, she's a great character and whatever, but like they kind of just left that thread dangling. You know, is she really going to save her girlfriend or whatever, or is she, you know, stealing famous paintings in Paris? Like, I almost wonder if there would be some sort of section in Paris that they would go play at, just to give us a new location, you know. But I would really like to see that kind of storyline wrap up, because I just feel like that is a loose end they never covered again, really. And you know, I don't think they're going to leave a loose end like that for a third game.
I agree with both of y'all, especially with the Black Cat. I mean, not the Black Cat, but the Carnage thing of like, man, she like Yuri's story ties in with what they have going on so well with like Carnage, and Yuri kind of like, I almost don't want to see Yuri again in the third game as well, because I'm like, I liked her story, but I'm like, it also feels like it's kind of like add on than it is like must. Like, there's so much going on already that we have like teed up for the third game. I don't necessarily know if I need Yuri's redemption arc added to that. You know,
you think they could potentially make her Carnage?
Oh, that would be a cool twist.
Yeah,
that'd be a cool
that way you
twist.
could wrap up 2 storylines with one stone. And I mean, they've been switching things up anyway over the course of these last 3 games. So.
Yeah, I think they'd still keep Cletus as Cassidy as Carnage.
Yeah,
it feels more natural, especially how they built it at that very end.
I for sure think we're gonna fight a Scream version, a la like Scream, like version of like a symbiote version of her, because like it'd almost be a waste of like Rafe's boss fight like moves that they've already built into the game.
Yeah.
And so I hope they make it like, whatever they do with the DLC, I hope they also have like dedicated, this is a Miles mission, this is a Peter's mission. Because I'm like, we already have like the ability to go around the city and kind of freelance with both of these characters. I just want dedicated content, around both of them.
Yeah, maybe one DLC will be Peter's and one will be Miles. That would be
for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. That was another kind of. I mean, we talked about it already, I guess, but that was like another issue I kind of had was like I wish they would have just focused on one of the characters, and I think that brings out the best in those characters. And juggling characters, just I don't know. Maybe it's just a me thing.
Now, all the missions where you have to play as one Spider-Man are like the best missions in the game, like Mysterio, like with Yuri and all that kind of stuff. I'm like all those where you have a personal connection with a character has a personal connection with what's going on is easily the best missions in the game.
Yeah, 100%. MH Noise writes in and asks, they said that they wanted to do a unique storyline that hadn't been done. Did they? And was that necessarily a good thing if they did?
They did side stories that were unique stories that kind of haven't been done, but the original premise of the originals were like half of it was Kraven's Last Hunt, half of it was Spider-Man Web of Shadows.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly the person to ask because I don't know much about Spider-Man other than like, the movies and a couple video games and a couple comics. But like, the biggest thing to me was like Harry was Venom and not Eddie Brock. And there's like no mention of Eddie Brock in here whatsoever. At least from what I've seen. So on that perspective, I think the Harry storyline was pretty cool. I do wish they would have done more with it, like we said earlier, but I think that was a cool way to incorporate healing Harry was through the symbiote and then becoming Venom.
I think a lot of the story was like stories that have been done in other mediums, but like they added just little twists to make it feel original, like with Doc Connors being the scientist behind everything, being like with Craven and like the way that he was taking out some of these villains in the manner that he was. I'm like, it's just little details that kind of made it feel original, but it's not necessarily an original overall story.
I mean, it's a nice touch how they were able to combine Miles and Peter and tell this original story. Like, it wasn't original, but it was at least a refresh from just retelling a story. So I'll definitely give it points for that.
She also asks, when she says, I won't listen to this until I finish Spider-Man 2, but she's going to throw this question out anyways. There's been a common criticism that both games are far too short for their price tag. Do you agree with this? No. I don't agree with the price tag. Okay, I'll say I very rarely do I agree with the premise that games have to be a certain length to require a certain price. My thing has always been, if you can't afford it, don't buy it. Some of us are are more in better positions than others to spend money, and games go on sale all the time. Games, Spider-Man 1 is like $15 or $20 if you can find it used or new.
On PC now too. So.
Yeah, I mean, games are expensive to make. This is a huge open world with a lot of mechanics and a lot of side quests and a lot of great missions and obviously like voice acting and mocap and everything is also top notch, and especially in these Sony exclusives. I think if the quality is there, it's definitely worth $70. Like there has been, I would make the argument that something the size of The Witcher could have been easily $100, $120 at some point. Like if you were to explore that.
Oh no!
Scale.
Don't give these people ideas.
Yeah,
people already are saying that Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be $150.
Yeah, I know. I doubt it because they're gonna make that money. Like even if they sold it at $60, they're gonna make their money back probably in a week.
Money back before they even sell the game.
Conservative side, and then they'll supplement the rest of that with Grand Theft Auto Online. But the price tag thing, the price tag question has always been ridiculous to me. So I mean, you guys can go. I've said my piece on that 100 times at this point, I think.
I
No,
feel
I
like the
agree.
whole price tag thing is also dumb just because of the fact, like, we were complaining, like, not even 5 years ago with the Assassin's Creed Valhalla that game was too damn long.
Yeah.
It's like, so really, you're complaining that you didn't get or you got more than your $60 worth of that game?
Yeah.
And it's like, now we're complaining when a game isn't 30 hours long. It's like, where is the happy medium?
Right.
But then again, we're talking about people who just don't want to ever be happy, so they
Yeah.
got to find something to complain about.
Yeah.
I also think like you always pay what you want for pay what you want, like vote with your wallet. So I'm like,
Yeah.
if you feel like it's too short, vote with your wallet and then wait until like you feel like it's a price that you are comfortable spending. So I'm like, I'm of that camp too. And then like I don't really complain about price unless it's like a anomaly. Like for me, like it kind of rubbed me the wrong way of Tears of the Kingdom being $70 because no other Switch game was $70 around that time frame. And like and I get it, like that's the price of games now, but like for me, like at that time I was like, Nintendo hasn't come out with a new console to warrant a $70 price tag. You know, like
Plus,
if there was a new Switch, I'd be like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Take it.
To your point on Tears of the Kingdom too, like Nintendo's budgets are extreme, like for the most part are substantially lower than something like Sony or Microsoft, just based off technology, voice acting, and mocap alone. Plus, like they're always, at least technology wise, like a generation behind, at least sometimes two. And Tears of the Kingdom was already based off of a previous game. Like the world and the assets and the animations were already built. They were just kind of, I don't want to say they were filling in the holes to like build a new game within a game, but this game started out as DLC for Breath of the Wild. So the $70 price tag, I think they did it because Zelda is Zelda, and Nintendo always sees himself as they're a prestige company in a sense. They're the Disney of video games. And so
I get that. I was just like, it was almost like they knew they can get away with it. So they did it. So, and I'm like, and I respect that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I understand that. It's just like, I'm like, that's the only time I'd ever argued price. And the only reason I got mad at that instance is because like, come on, man. I'm like, give us a new console before you go up in price,
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's like Nintendo did it because they could get away with it and people would buy it, and people are still buying it. It's sold all 19 million units so far. So
at full price. So
I don't think it's been on sale once.
I don't think Nintendo never really does like hardcore sales. It's like $45, you know?
They're having like a quote unquote game award sale right now, and their first party games are $45 instead of 60 or 50 for the most part. So I don't know. I kind of find the price thing a ridiculous thing to argue about. I'm sorry, but not everybody has to play everything, and you're not entitled to play everything. And if you
yes, I am.
If you can't afford it at full price, then wait for a sale or don't buy it at all. That's always been my opinion.
Vote wallet, and you know your wallet better than anyone else.
Yeah. Well, theoretically, I know I have family members that think their wallet is filled with Bill Gates money and they should be living in a box because they're so poor. But anyways, I digress. They don't listen to this.
I keep my quality of life low so that I do have the money for video games.
Yeah.
Hey man, we all do what we gotta do.
And obviously, like if you own an Xbox, like Game Pass is a great thing if you want to play their first party games, right? And Game Pass is a great thing. PlayStation Plus is a great thing to catch up on older games. The subscription services are easing that kind of urge to play more than you can afford, but still, like, I don't know.
And the other Spider-Man games are also on PlayStation Extra at this time. So I'm like, Spider-Man 2, if you wait it out, will be on PlayStation Extra eventually. So
yeah, man, I almost I would like to do like we did for Resident Evil 4, like this group to do a Spider-Man 1 and Miles Morales discussion at some point.
Whew.
This was a great discussion. I
Mhm.
had a blast talking about this game.
Same here.
Mm-hmm.
Sebastion,
We didn't even broach everything.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
yeah,
Yeah, we didn't even go. Normally, we go through the storyline, and we just kind of jumped around and talked about.
mm-hmm,
It just the conversation just flowed naturally.
mm-hmm. And I
So,
liked it. So,
Mhm.
any final thoughts on an elevator review of Spider-Man 2, Pat?
It was good.
It was good. Okay. Sebastion, your elevator pitch for a review on Spider-Man 2.
Spider-Man 2 is not a perfect game by any means. And do not expect perfection out of this. But if you love the first two, this is the perfect popcorn game this in 2023. You're going to get bombastic moments. You're going to get emotional beats. It's one of the most well-designed games. Like we should have probably just talked 50 minutes about the fast travel system and then switching it between both characters being instantaneous, because it is magnificent, it's glorious, and it makes it feel like a next gen experience, because Spider-Man 2 feels like a next gen experience. Everyone, if you like Spider-Man, if you like comic books, if you like that, if you want something like that makes your PS2 feel like it is a next gen console, definitely check out Spider-Man 2. If none of those things speak to you, this ain't going to be for you.
Yeah.
With great power comes great responsibility. Peace out, everybody.
Be better together.
Yeah, I would say Spider-Man 2, I think, is one of the few games that kind of shows what the PlayStation 5 can do at this point in its life cycle. In my opinion, it is a must play if you are a PlayStation fan. If you're a Marvel fan, if you're a Spider-Man fan, this is a must play. A few surprises. The gameplay is flawless. The story is good, but maybe should have been better. But overall, I would probably give this game like an 8.5, 9.
Woo, good score.
The points I would knock would be mostly for the story. Actually, it would not be for the gameplay or the length or the side missions or anything. It would definitely be more for the story stuff, but definitely a must play if you have a PlayStation 5. Also, if you don't have a PlayStation 5, there's a Spider-Man 2 bundle, so you should check that out. And the first two games are also on PlayStation Plus, so you're all set for Spider-Man fans. So, yeah, I want to thank everybody for watching and tuning in to this Boss Rush Video Game Book Club. You can catch it once a month on our YouTube channel. If you are a patron at the $1 tier or higher, you get this episode 1 month early. Sebastion, thanks for joining us on this. Couldn't have thought of anybody better to be in on this conversation. Where can we find you?
Thank you. Honored to be here. You can find me at the Single Player Experience podcast. It's available on all your favorite podcast platforms. And then, if y'all want to see me save the day and everything like that, that's you can find me on the streets of New York, swinging around town. But definitely look for me at the like on Spotify or anything else that you like listening to. All video game podcasts there. You can find me at the Single Player Experience podcast.
Awesome. It's a great show. I listen to
Thank
it
you.
a lot. So I think you're going to be seeing Sebastion more on Boss Rush content in 2024. He's on the list of people to get on more of our stuff. So become familiar with Sebastion. Pat, thank you for joining me as always.
Not a problem.
I want to thank everybody out there for your support, your kindness, and your love. Our next video game book club is Super Mario RPG, the remake for Switch, which was voted on by you over on Patreon. The February Patreon is up for voting now, so you can go vote over there. Right now, it's between Uncharted, Drake's Fortune, and Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. So go vote. And thank everybody for watching and or listening. And until next time, we love you. Goodbye.
So long.
If you want to be a Patreon producer, head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/BossRushMedia, and find out which tier is right for you. Our Patreon producers at the $5 tier or higher for this month are Adriel Munger, Celeste Roberts, Christian S., Sana Dirrig, Francisco Santillan, and Rebecca Jewell. Thank you for your continued support.